Yes, welcome in. Well, that didn't go according to plan for Wisconsin. They fall to High Point, 83-82 in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They are headed home. Their season is done. Just like that, it's all over, Jesse.
Yes, and obviously you and I are in our respective hotel rooms out here in Portland. We just got out of the arena, had a chance to talk to everybody after the game, and the emotions were as you would expect. But I told you this as soon as the game ended. Big picture-wise, when we evaluated this matchup, you could believe this was possible. But as I was watching this game unfold, I cannot believe that Wisconsin lost this game. I understand why and how it happened, but the Badgers led this game for almost 34 minutes. They had a 10-point lead early, and every time they got out in front, High Point continued to fight back. But the Badgers had an 8-point lead midway through the second half, and they were still ahead by 4 points with a minute left. And yet, despite those leads and despite Wisconsin playing pretty well offensively, I know it wasn't great, but you got your guards playing very well. They still couldn't win because High Point caught fire and did everything that a 12 seed needed to do to secure the upset. And as you said, Zach, now the Badgers are headed home and we're left to lament another NCAA tournament where you're just asking, what if?
We are still waiting for them to get to the second round, or I should say the second weekend of the tournament. It's been since 2017. It'll get extended. So it'll be a decade by the time they have a chance next year to do it. And that's a long way away. And we would love to talk about that and look forward to it. But unfortunately, we have no idea what the roster is going to look like. So we can't do a ton of that today. We will talk about whether they're going to be able to hold on to Nolan Winter and John Blackwell and some of the pieces that potentially could come back. But I feel like obviously we need to attack what happened in this game and really what happened at the end of the season, where Wisconsin is not heading to the Sweet 16 and instead heading home. And we're going to get into all of it. Before we do, for anybody that's listening to this, we do have a YouTube channel. Go check it out. The Camp Badger, just search the Camp Badgers. You'll find it. Subscribe. It'll help our show. And you can also find all of Jesse's work up at badgerconnect.com, and certainly had a story coming off of this one.
Yes, been a very basketball-heavy stretch here at Badger Connect. Spring practices, we'll have that down the road. But planning to have another story out of this on the future, which I know we'll touch on some. But check it all out over at Badger Connect.
Yes. All right. Wisconsin is headed home. And Jesse kind of, broke it down. But where do we need to start with this one? I feel like we need to start when it's 70-62. And Wisconsin has an 8-point lead, and there's about 7 minutes left. They go on to miss their next 4 shots. And it's not like High Point was shooting lights out there. They didn't score in that little stretch either. It wasn't until Johnston pulled up from the logo, drilled a 3, then you had another 3 off of Wisconsin got a rebound. John Blackwell's foot's out of bounds. They hit the 3-pointer coming off that. All of a sudden, it's 70-68 and game on.
Yeah. I know that there were those empty possessions. I still can't believe Wisconsin lost because it wasn't like High Point was lighting it up and suddenly took a lead. Wisconsin maintained that lead. But, John Blackwell had such an outstanding first half. What did he finish with? 18 points? No, 20 points in the first half, right?
Yep, 20 of his 22 came in the first half.
Right. And then Nick Boyd kind of took over in the second half, and he was the guy. And we've said this all season, like, you kind of have to live and die with what Nick Boyd is going to do, and most of the time he's going to get you something. He'll get to the rack, and he did it on numerous occasions to keep Wisconsin out in front. But late, when he was trying to get in there, he was not able to convert, and ultimately those possessions really hindered Wisconsin. I still think this is a game, and Greg Gard talked about this too. He didn't come away thinking we played poorly, and High Point shot some ridiculous threes to win this game and had certain things go their way. And I don't want to act like Wisconsin's not at fault here, because I know you're asking specifically on when it was 70-62, but this is not a High Point team that should ever out-rebound Wisconsin. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. High Point's starting rotation doesn't have anyone taller than 6'8". They have one guy who's 6'10" and played 4 minutes. The Badgers had Nolan Winter back. He's a 7-footer. You had Alexis Biliauskas out there. Austin Rapp, 6'10". They out-rebounded Wisconsin 40-37 and got 13 offensive rebounds, a lot of those on those long missed three-pointers. All of that led to what ended up happening. But Johnston got loose, man. And I know they had a dude bank in a three, and somehow Johnston makes this bucket, which you pointed out, and then I looked it up, and of course you were right because you're often right. His first two-pointer the entire season, he's made 68 three-pointers, but he got loose off Nick Boyd misses a shot, and Wisconsin isn't able to corral it, and boom, Wisconsin loses the game. I know I'm sort of rambling here, but there's just so much to take in, and obviously Wisconsin couldn't get it done on the possessions that mattered most.
They couldn't, and yes, I am. First of all, I am very deeply hurt that you said right most of the time. I feel like
should I have said every time? Should I have said every time?
You should not, because I was wrong about this game. Certainly thought Wisconsin was going to win it. Was not right on that one. But yeah, the Johnson stat is just insane. He was 0 for 4 on 2-pointers this year. And for him to be the one that gets out on the break, and Andrew Rohde talked about it, he goes, I tried running him down, I couldn't get him. For him to get out on the break, and if you go and look at the coach's face, the coach for High Point, he's like holding his breath when he goes up for that layup. He like, you just never know. But yeah, he was 0 for 4 on 2-pointers before that shot. So that is for the season. For the season, that's insane.
Yes.
High Point hit 15 3-pointers. Greg Gard talked about it after the game, and it was, I don't want to say poetic, but him talking about a team shooting a bunch of threes and hitting them and knocking off a team that they shouldn't. Considering what his team did, how many times this year to teams that are clearly on most days better than Wisconsin, right? Michigan, most days better than Wisconsin. Illinois, I know they beat them twice, and they did it without 3-pointers the second time. But that's a really good Illinois team. Michigan State.
Jake Davis said they would win 7 out of 10 times, Zach. So Jake Davis did the math, and obviously they'd win 7 out of the other 8.
Yes, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like the way that they beat the best teams this year, for the most part, outside of the second Illinois game, was because they hit a ton of threes. They took a ton of threes, hit a ton of threes. It is the equalizer in college basketball. And it was clear that High Point took that to heart and knew they had one way to win, shoot a lot of threes, and they made a lot. Again, 15 for 40. It's not like it's amazing, but it was when they hit them. And they could not miss down the stretch. And it did not allow Wisconsin to pull away like they have many times against teams that are not on their level, not be able to pull away at the end. And I really thought when it got to 70-62, if they could have just got one more basket, just hit one of the, get a layup to go. They missed so many layups today. John Blackwell was part of that. Nick Boyd was part of it. The showboating one that he just didn't need. The one where he pulled it back.
Yes.
Like that was unnecessary. And then, Alexis Bielauskas 1 for 5, and there were a couple right around the basket that he wasn't able to get in the first half. They had opportunities to pull and put that game away, and they didn't do it. And when you leave an opportunity for a team that can shoot the three and did shoot the three the way they did, that High Point did down the stretch, that's the result. But like what Greg Gard told a story about Joe Krabbenhoff and how you're about to talk about that. Go ahead.
You got it.
No, I mean North Dakota when they were with when he was with South Dakota State, right? Or he was with South Dakota State, and they were playing Maryland, and there was only one way to win: shoot a bunch of threes and hope they make them, and they did, and that was how I think High Point went after it today, and that's what it is. But Greg Gard also said they beat us. We played well, but they beat us. Would you agree with that? For the most part, or no?
Well, he said we didn't play bad, and I would agree with that for the most part. And I think it's worth acknowledging, you were talking about before, it is poetic justice was how you used it, because High Point shot 43s and Wisconsin has taken a lot of threes. Greg fully acknowledged that Wisconsin has won its share of games by doing what High Point did. But he also said that this was the strategy. If High Point was going to give itself an opportunity, you're going to chuck a lot of threes and hope that you hit enough. And I go back to that stat about 13 offensive rebounds from High Point. Well, to me, that makes the percentage of threes not meaningless, but less important. Like not really. Doesn't matter if you go 15 for 40 if you get those 15 threes on, say, 33 possessions or something like that, because you're getting the long rebounds and you're getting a second chance opportunity. But ultimately, High Point made 9 of those 3-pointers in the second half, and a lot of them were in the last 8 to 10 minutes. Obviously, Johnston, look, Wisconsin knew the scouting report, and in the first half, I thought they were excellent in terms of defending Johnston in particular. Now, I know it was only a 2-point game at the half, but High Point was like 6 for 23 from 3 in the first half, and Johnston only attempted 2. He made 1, but he got loose. And once that happened, just all hell broke loose. You mentioned the shot that he makes from the March Madness logo, and then the 3 that he hit to pull him within 1. He's coming off a screen on the right wing, and he's like 2 inches in front of his bench. I mean, he was out there, and that's all he needed. And obviously, it was the recipe for success for High Point, and just all the little things Wisconsin needed to do well, it couldn't do well. You mentioned this, but John Blackwell trying to get the pass, the inbounds, right? And it gets knocked away. Was it an inbounds or was it a rebound?
I thought it was the one that got knocked away. Yeah.
The one that got knocked away, and they did the review, and it was overturned because initially it was Wisconsin's ball. John is talking about, like, if I catch that, or maybe it was even the rebound that he had an opportunity to get on one of Nick Boyd's shots in the lane. Any of those things, he's like, we win the game. And look, hindsight is 2020. You're always going to pick at the things you didn't do right, especially in a 1-point loss that ends your season. Yes, Wisconsin could have done some things better, certainly. But when you get 49 points from your backcourt duo, it ought to be enough to win. High Point just took advantage of the situation. And I know I shouldn't be stunned, but I still feel a little bit stunned that they somehow won this game, because they led for all of like 2.5 minutes the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, it was 3-2, and then Wisconsin took that lead, and it wasn't back the other way until late in that game. So it always feels like something, but this is the first time, and we talked about this after the game, this is the first time in a while that it's been this kind of heartbreak. Right,
man.
It's been since the last time they went to the Sweet 16 that they've had this kind of heartbreak. If you go through, and maybe I'll hold off on that, because I think that's certainly just more bigger picture than the game itself. The last 2 possessions, offensively, you put the ball in the hands of the guy who's gotten you there, right? He had 27 points. Nick Boyd had 27 points, 20 of that in the second half. Many of the shots that he made in the second half were very similar to what he was trying to attempt there at the end, and the guy made a great play. And he wasn't. We'll talk about it. I mean, he was not distraught afterwards. Like, I was expecting a very emotional, maybe some tears, final college game for him. Like, I saw Braden Carrington with tears. There were some guys like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was not the case for Nick Boyd. He was, like, as you said before we jumped on here, I gave it everything I had, and I can live with that. And he did. But the same plays that he made all year, being able to float the ball over guys, guys much bigger than him at the rim, and get him to fall. Those 2 times, the final 2 possessions, he wasn't able to do it.
I can't take issue with those possessions in terms of the strategy. Obviously, it didn't work out for Wisconsin, but Greg talked about it. Certainly the one that ended up where he got the shot blocked, there was about 4 seconds left, and then High Point ended up missing the free throw. Nolan Winter got the rebound. That's how they were able to have Andrew Rohde at least try and throw a 3/4 court pass that was intercepted. But, Boyd's the guy who got you here. Obviously, John Blackwell as well, but Boyd was the hot hand. He consistently was able to knife through that defense and get to the rim, and all you want to do is give yourself a chance, and you feel good more often than not if Boyd is going to get to the rim. I've said this on numerous occasions this season. There are also going to be instances where he's getting that stuff blocked, and that's how it worked out for Wisconsin on those last couple of possessions. But you're right at the rim, and that's where you want to be. You can nitpick and you can say, well, should he have dished to somebody else for a 3 or whatever, but he's right there, and if he can knife through that last guy and just get it to the glass, you feel like you got a shot.
And he did. it was clear that they knew that Boyd often, when he goes in there, he's not passing it. Like when he gets that deep, he's probably he'll stop and he'll move around, but he didn't have that opportunity to do that. I mean, they knew there was one option once he got down that far, and it was him putting it up. There would have been guys open, but those are not passes that you can really make in that situation either, unless you start that earlier than whatever it was, like 3 seconds left. It's nearly impossible to do it, right? As a former, probably a guy that drove the ball a ton in his basketball career.
I think defensively, I mean, I know Wisconsin ended up with 82 points, but I think High Point deserves a lot of credit, despite, again, giving up a game-high 27 to Nick Boyd. Like, they did some really good things. They went to a zone. I think they kind of flustered Wisconsin at least a little bit. And what I find most interesting about the way this game played out is, what's a topic we spent all season talking about? 3-point shooting and how many threes Wisconsin took and how many they needed to make. And what did it take? 23? That would have
tied for the second fewest all year.
It's just remarkable that they lost a game, and it wasn't because they went 7 for 41 or something like that. It was because they didn't convert at the rim, and the 3-point shot really wasn't as big of a component for them. But maybe some of that had to do with how High Point chose to defend, because I think they made it a little more challenging than perhaps it would have expected a team like that to do.
I think they absolutely did. There were opportunities, and we saw John Blackwell take advantage of those opportunities in the first half, especially in the corners. Last year it was Kamara McGee that couldn't miss from the corner. It felt like John Blackwell at times, especially down the stretch, could not miss from the corner. He did have that one in the second half that was not pretty, but for the most part, he's been really, really good in the corner, and he had some. They didn't have a ton of those opportunities in the second half, as he had just 2 points after halftime. There's, again, when you lose by one and when you lose an 8-point lead, you can point to a lot of little different things that happen and didn't happen, for that matter. But getting Nolan Winter back, did he have the impact that you thought he would? And he doesn't start. He comes in off the bench. He ends up playing 21 minutes. He had 8 points and 4 rebounds. There was one nice offensive rebound and putback that was that you're like, okay, there's Nolan, but for the most part, he didn't feel like he had a huge impact on it.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the big questions coming into this game. What do you do with Nolan Winters, since it seemed pretty clear it was headed toward him playing? Do you just put him back in the starting lineup and act like everything is fine? Do you keep Austin Rapp there, who in his last outing made 6 threes in what felt like 42 seconds? And Wisconsin was able to win without Nolan Winter being in there, win some very important games. So they brought him off the bench. He was in about 4 or 5 minutes into the game. He was the first sub in as well as Braden Carrington. And by the way, Wisconsin only played 7 players in this game, which I thought was interesting. Makes sense. You want to lean on experience. Obviously, Jack Janicki was not able to go, and we can touch on that later too. But with Winter, he said conditioning wasn't an issue. He felt fine. I do feel like in the first half, though, I'm not inside his head, and so I'm not going to say he was tentative, but I felt like there were a couple moments in the second half where it started to feel like that's the Nolan Winter that we've seen throughout this season. A couple possessions where he could just get it down low and do work, and feels like, again, if you have this height advantage, and in his instance, it's 4 inches, you feel like you should be able to take advantage of it, especially in a game where Wisconsin only took 23 3-point shots. But so in 21 minutes, he got those 8 points. Would you have liked to have had him make a bigger impact? Yes. I also think that's a tough spot to be in. 15 days. It's not nothing to just work your way in off the bench for the first time this year, by the way, and try and figure out how you're going to make the impact and be the dominant guy who had so many double-doubles. So it's a tricky spot for Wisconsin, but at least it was good that he was able to play. So maybe you don't look back on a loss and you're kicking yourself saying like, yeah, what if he had given it a go instead of being another 48 hours away?
I had no expectations for him coming in. I honestly, when he left the court against Maryland, I remember I was sitting next to Evan Flood, and I'm like, I don't know if we see him again. He can't put any weight on his left leg. He was screaming in pain, like he was writhing on the ground for like minutes. I'm like, Okay. And then when I saw him in Chicago last week, walking around the way he was, I'm like, I don't know. And for him to come out and play the way he did, he didn't look injured. I'll say that. Like, he didn't look tentative in terms of like running and cutting and jumping. Like, I didn't look like there were any issues whatsoever. So I give him a ton of credit coming back and playing them, and even being able to play 2 weeks off of that. I mean, that looked bad when it happened. When you're not, and he was in a ton of pain. And again, I know Greg Gard said after the game that he was like, when he got injured, or it was like the first time he had done that to that ankle, and it hurts most. It hurts more when you do it for the first time. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think I've rolled an ankle enough times to know whether that's true or not. But at least with Nolan, him coming back and playing, give him credit for that. Alexis Bielauskas, just 1 of 5, but he was plus 13 today. When he was on the floor, the Badgers 13 points better than High Point. So give him credit as a true freshman coming in and playing the way he did. Austin Rapp, 12 points, 4 rebounds, hit a couple of threes. There's stuff to build on for next year with a number of these guys. But I think it's probably at least time to at least start talking about why they can't get past the first weekend.
Yeah.
This has become, for a long, long time, you had an identity of being able to make runs. You know, Bo couldn't get to the Final Four, right? Like, that was the whole thing. You can't get to the Final Four, but he was getting to the Sweet 16 a lot, and maybe Elite 8 once, the one in 2005. There was never like an extended drought between trips to the Sweet 16. This drought is going to last at least another year, and a lot of the games have similar setups, I guess I would say. This is the third time they've lost as a 5 seed to a 12 seed. The second time they've lost to a team from a non-power conference. James Madison 2 years ago. This one from the Big South. This was the first win by High Point against a power conference opponent ever. They were 0-57. 0-57 coming into this game. So there's that. The other one was Oregon back in 2019. They lost a de facto home game to an Iowa State team. Well, I will at least sit here and say, yes, Johnny Davis was not 100%. You lose Chucky Hepburn. Okay. You lose last year to a BYU team that was underseeded because they couldn't play on Sunday. So they got underseeded, but Wisconsin was out of that game until John Tonje came back. But either way, you lost as a higher seed. The only game in this entire stretch where you weren't expected to win, or at least favored to win, was in 2021, when you played Baylor, who went on to win the national championship. So this is not a situation where you are always the underdog and can't get over the hump because you're just not good as these other teams. You're not playing up to what people think you're supposed to be.
Yes. So when we went into this tournament, we talked about what could happen for the Badgers, and that their ceiling was so high that it wouldn't surprise me if they made it to the Sweet 16, because they've beaten 5 top 15 teams in the last 2 months of the season. And yet it also wouldn't be a surprise if they lost the first game, because we'd seen what their floor could be. But it's tricky because every season is different, and yet they all have this same result now with not being able to get out of the first weekend. They've changed so much in that time. Offensively, we've seen what they've done. This year, they scored more points on average than any Wisconsin team in 55 years. I kind of look at this and go, like, what is Greg Gard supposed to do in terms of how you construct a roster? Now, a key question is defensively. If you can evolve offensively, how do you maintain? And it's not like they don't teach defense. Then there's more possessions and they're playing faster. But I looked this up and put this in the story that this is the most points Wisconsin has given up in a season in 50 years, like 76 points a game. And we saw that there were issues. And Greg was asked about this afterward in the locker room and talked about it, that defensively, this was really never a team. That was a concern. Why did they bring these guys in? Because of their scoring ability, because of the 3-point shooting, because you knew you needed to continue to evolve in year 3 of this ball screen continuity offense. But something has been lost a little bit defensively, and players acknowledge that needs to be fixed. Now, I don't necessarily know how you do that, like maintaining this style of play and scoring points. And I know we'll talk about roster construction because we have no idea ultimately who they're going to get. I think it's a challenge too when you get these rosters together and it's 8 new dudes in a year, to get them together to play with a style that has been known for years. It's not known for them. And you're recruiting them because of their offensive ability. I mean, I was talking to Joe Krabanoff about this a few weeks ago. He's like, yes, like defense still matters. We teach it, all those things. And he said, and I'd be lying to you if I said, when I look at the film, the first thing I'm looking at is their like one-on-one on-ball defense. It's like, can they shoot? Can they score? But this is part of Greg Gard's, I don't know if legacy is the right word, but it's the narrative or how he's judged, because he's been a really good regular season coach. I think we can all acknowledge that. He's a 2-time Big Ten Coach of the Year. This Wisconsin team in a very difficult Big Ten, again, won those 5 games against top 15 teams, finished 14-6 in the regular season. He's won well over 60% of his games, but you're also judged by what you do in the NCAA tournament. And he's got an under 500 record in the tournament. And again, now we're going to be going on a decade without getting out of the first weekend. And you've lost as a 5 seed to a 12 on 3 occasions since 2019. But I guess my question is, well, what are they supposed to do? Like, how do you build a roster to withstand this? I asked Jack Janicki in the locker room, and I thought he gave a pretty thoughtful answer. He's like, all you can do is keep putting yourself in this position, because when you go into the tournament, you have an opportunity to make a 3 weekend run. And there's also the chance that you get bounced right away. And so, I don't have a good answer for this, because they do strike me to be all a little bit different. The results, like the teams they've constructed and how they've lost and what happened.
Yes, I would agree. The funny thing is, like, people, what's the definition of insanity? What's that saying? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Yes. They're not doing that. They have not done that. They completely changed who they were as a program. And so, like, we can't sit there and say, well, they're not making this move and they're not making that move to make it so they can actually improve and advance. They have made those changes and they still aren't advancing. And so, like, that's the question. Like, what is the answer? And the answer to me, and again, I know you want to play defense. I know you want better defense than what we've seen from Wisconsin this year. But until college basketball changes the way that players are able to move around, which who knows if they ever will change that. Maybe this is just the way it's going to be. And if this is the way that's going to be, well, this is the way you have to construct your roster. You get an offensive player that's really, really good in offense, and you hope to build him as a defensive player and to build up him as a defender. Get the best offensive player you possibly can find. See a guy that's bought into your culture, which I think Nick Boyd was bought into the culture, and Braden Carrington bought into the culture. Obviously, Andrew Rohde bought into the culture. Austin Rapp bought into the culture of your program. But then, try and bring them along as defenders. And we saw, like, an Austin Rapp make huge leaps and jumps as a defender. And you get him for 2 more years, potentially. That's the way that they're going to have to continue to build the roster. So the same things, the result has been the same, not getting to the second weekend, but I don't think you can change how you build your team in this era of college basketball.
I don't either. That's what makes it so tough here, because I do go back to, what are you supposed to do? And obviously this all starts, the head coach gets the credit and gets the blame, and it's his teams. I don't know what he can do to push the right buttons to get these things to go well. And people probably don't want to hear the notion that it's a crapshoot. I guess after a decade, you'd think at a certain point there would be a breakthrough. And maybe it's that Wisconsin's teams in general, the talent gap between who they're playing and where they're at isn't so substantial that they can overcome certain things in different games. And so I don't know, man. I mean, High Point played their asses off and probably played the game of their lives. But I also want to acknowledge, because you were talking before about, it is true. They were 0-57 against major conference programs or power conference programs. Because I put this in the story too. Like, that is true. And this is a totally different High Point team that's 31-4, that hasn't lost a game since January 14th, that now with a 15-game winning streak has the longest winning streak in Division I. So, I felt this way going into James Madison. These kinds of teams always scare me. 30-plus win teams from mid-major conferences, even if they didn't play anybody, and they didn't, they know how to win and they know how to play as a team, and that makes it really tough for Wisconsin. But it doesn't change the fact that the Badgers continue to lose in the early stages of the NCAA tournament, but they've got to continue to build in this fashion. And I asked Greg, what do you do in the future here? I said, I know this maybe isn't a fair question because you're 2 seconds removed from this loss and you're still processing it. But he's talking about how, Mark Van de Wettering, the GM and the staff, like this has already been a process where you're going to have to rebuild your roster every single year. And they're going to have to go to the portal and figure out who fits for this next year, because that's what college sports and college basketball is. You got to find the right pieces and hope it all comes together, and hope you can have some retention too of your key players.
I know people want us to rip Greg Gard and hold him accountable. And I think he has to be held accountable for lack of performance in March. Mm-hmm. Right? But I don't know, what do you, and I just don't know what you do about, you're mm-hmm. not going to, you want to put yourself in this position every single year. Greg Gard's a really good coach. It has not worked out well for him in March. And I wonder, and this is a complete aside, but I wonder if that 4-year run where they're making it, they should have been in perhaps 4 straight Final Fours, but maybe 3 straight Final Fours. But some of the things that went their way in those tournaments have now come back the other way a little bit. And Wisconsin has been on the look. The losses in those 4 straight years were the worst losses you can possibly have, right? I know that's where you were going with it, but to even make it that deep, some mm-hmm. of the things that had to happen for them to make it that deep and into those games made it even more painful, right? For the way they lost, but a lot of things had to go their way as well to get that far. You can't just say bring in a new coach, he'll be better in March. They've put themselves in really good spots and have not performed in March. And that right now, fair or not, I think it is fair. That is Greg Gard's legacy. Very good regular season coach, has not been good in March. And yes. Who do you want to blame for that? If you want to blame players, go for it. If you want to blame Greg Gard, he's the constant in this from 2017 to 2026. He's the constant. He's the person that's been around the entire time. And so it falls on his shoulders. And he talked about it after the game. It's a shitty way to go out, right? It's a shitty way to go out. The tournament's not fair. This team should have gone further. Thought they should have made a run to the Final Four. But guess what? That's not reality. That didn't happen. It hasn't happened. And he has to own that record. I just don't know what you do about it. If you're Chris McIntosh, I think you just continue to support and give more money and try and get even better players in here. But they played a volatile stretch, or they played a volatile style of basketball this year. And unfortunately for them today, it caught up to them because the other team was pretty volatile as well.
Yeah, when you go a decade, and this definitely is, a narrative makes it seem like it's something we're talking about that shouldn't be talked about by everybody else. This is part of the story. Fantastic regular season coach, and you are also judged by what you do in the postseason. And Wisconsin has lost far too many games that it felt like the Badgers shouldn't lose. But I don't want to lose sight of the big picture of what Greg is as a coach and what this program has been able to accomplish to maintain a consistent level of play that allows the Badgers to, in most seasons, be in the NCAA tournament. And obviously he was following a Hall of Fame coach in Bo Ryan, whose story was a little bit different because it wasn't about making it out of the first weekend. It was about getting to the Final Four, but they were in the NCAA tournament every year. They were in the top 4 of the Big Ten every year, which is insane. And don't know that we'll see that again from anybody. But this is part of the story with Greg, and you just have to try and reload and hope that things, that doesn't sound great, but hope that things go your way when you get in the same spot. Because, when you ask the players about it, I think they look at it like, I've been playing basketball my whole life, and this is what basketball is. And it's a hard thing to accept. but sometimes that's just what happens. It's just when that sometimes occurs every year in the NCAA tournament, it's a real tough pill to swallow for everybody involved.
I know a coach that used to say, "Hope is not a method." Jesse,
Yes.
Do you know what coach that was?
Hope is not a strategy. I just heard somebody else say
No,
that.
no. Hope is not a method.
Oh, I know.
Is it wrong? Is that
well? Look, I
Paul
think
Chris said it all the time.
Yes, all you can do is put yourself in that spot every year and hope that you've done enough to be playing well at that stage. I mean, I don't know, man. High Point they made everything. I know that Wisconsin made some mistakes, but good Lord, some of those threes. Really?
I mean, let's be fair about it. They didn't make all of them
down the stretch.
They run, yeah. Yes, down the stretch they made the shots that they were supposed to, but that was because Wisconsin could not put them out. They had a chance to put them out. They didn't put them out.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't have that chance against BYU last year. They had to come back in that game. The James Madison game, they were horrible in the first half. Got down. No chance they were coming back out of that one. The Iowa State losing. I mean, they were up when Chucky went out. I don't know if they would have won that. They went 2 for 20 something in that game from 3. They're really, really bad and had no backup point guard. So I mean, the Oregon loss. I mean, Baylor was, again, the one difference, but the Oregon loss, Oregon was playing really well down the stretch. Wisconsin was not. That was an easy 12-5 pick. And then obviously didn't make the tournament the year before that. And the year before that was Chiozza. So the fact that we're able to rattle that off, and again, I know it's March, so maybe I thought about it a little bit more, but it's not that hard to rattle off just because it happens almost every single year where you're going to have disappointment. And this disappointment is just more so because you thought that they had a chance with the way that they played down the stretch to make a run. And Greg Gard certainly thought that as well, but they didn't. And now we're sitting here talking about it and looking for early plane rides home because Wisconsin couldn't get out of the first round again. How many times did Bo Ryan lose in the first round?
Oh, I'd have to look it up.
Can't be too many.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a ton. Now you're gonna make me go look it up.
Yeah, okay. I know. So So obviously he never missed the tournament. He made the tournament every year. Greg has lost 3 opening round games, plus not made the tournament another 2 years.
Twice.
And unfortunately, so Arizona was one time, and the other time was Ole Miss.
Yep, 05-06. That was not a great Wisconsin team. They went 19-12 overall, 9-7 in the league, and tied for 4th. And then
I think they lost 6 straight at one time.
That 12-13 team, which we talked on the last show, was the first NCAA tournament game of the Badgers that I covered, and they were not a great shooting team. So yeah, it was very unusual for them to lose in the first round. Yeah,
Marshall Henderson, I think he might have been Pros and Joe's the other day on Barstool. I know Kamari McGee was. Kamari went off. I don't know. Do you see that?
I did.
Yeah. That's funny. No, the Arizona game, I remember that one. I feel like that was like an early Thursday start. Just very similar to what it was in 13 when that happened. They were one of the first games that day. I feel like they were one of the first games that Thursday back in 05-06. I remember watching it at the Sport Bowl in Middleton, and Arizona just dusted them. Absolutely dusted them. It's the only time Arizona has beaten them in the tournament was that. He's been knocked out of the first round 3 times and lost and not made the tournament 2 other times. When you're trying to compare that to Bo, which probably is not fair. That's the best coach in school history, and in Greg's record overall is pretty darn good when you're talking about regular season. And he also has obviously have not won the Big Ten tournament title. I don't know how important that is. For some it is, for some it's not. The unfortunate part of this whole thing, and because I don't know if we would still be talking about it because it would have been 6 years instead of 10 or 9, but that 2020 team, you would have wished you could have seen what they did in the tournament, right? And
it's part of the story. It's all part of the story. And
we can't, right? But it's fair to talk about it. At least mention it.
I think at this point, the topic it's natural that it goes like, where does Wisconsin go from here, especially as it relates to John Blackwell and Nolan Winter, because we have no idea who the new guys are going to be. That's to be determined with the portal situation. But the retention topic is pretty top of mind right now, I would think.
It is. Greg Gard was asked about it. He said they've been working on it and working through it. Both Nolan Winter and John Blackwell were asked about it. You asked John Blackwell about it. He was, I was going to say I need to go find the quote, but it was very short.
I'm going to give it to you right now. Yeah. I mean, look, I understand that this question 19 minutes after a team loses its most crushing loss of the year may not feel fair, but just from the reporter's perspective, this is the last time we're going to have an opportunity to talk to these guys before they make whatever decision they ultimately make. And that's why it's fair game to ask, because sometimes guys will give you a straight up answer, and sometimes guys will make it clear by and how they don't answer that they're not going to be back. AJ Storr comes to mind a couple of years ago. But so I just asked John, like, because when people ask about next season and you hear the guys talking about, well, we have to do this next year. So I said, is your expectation that you'll be back next year? And he said, I don't know yet. After the loss, I don't know, just praying to God and hope for the best situation. And he was pretty distraught. You know, he used that word before, and like you could see the tears in his eyes and how much it meant. And I also thought it was interesting because he talked about how hard this year was for him and what he went through. And I think there was an inkling that it was a tough year for him. And I don't know exactly what it was that was so difficult, but he said, when he was asked what this group meant to him, and he said, they meant everything to me. He said, honestly, this is one of the hardest years of my life mentally. And these guys took me in and kept picking me up. I went through it like a lot, is how he put it. And then I asked if would he be able to share any more insight on what that meant. And he was just talking about little things. It sounded to me like off the court things, because he specifically talked about how when he was searching for positives, basketball is like therapy for him. And when he came in the gym, no matter what was going on, that was a good place for him. So again, I don't know what any of that means, and I don't know how that portends for his future, but I feel pretty murky on what John is going to decide. You know, a year ago, he did test the NBA draft waters, and I don't know whether he's in a position to be able to be an NBA draft pick or whether it would be going somewhere else or coming back. We know in this era that there are going to be schools, whether it's legal or not, that are going to, through whatever channels are available, provide that information on what they believe a player could get paid. And so I don't know where things stand there. I think Nolan Winter was trying to say that in this time, right after the game, he's trying to soak up this time with his guys because they're never going to be this unit ever again. But I feel like the expectation would be that he would be back for a fourth year. I would just say, though, that you never truly know. And then the Chucky Hepburn situation a few years ago will, I think, for a while be the ultimate example, because he even came back and started off-season workouts. Now I think financially, certainly with the rev share and everything that Wisconsin has to offer, they're in a better position, I believe, to pay the top-end guys. But some school could come out of here and say, we're going to offer you double or triple. I mean, that sounds insane, but it is not. And I think that would be tough for these guys. But for a second straight offseason, the focus on retention of John Blackwell and Nolan Winter is top of mind and super important for Wisconsin. If you can get both those guys back for their senior seasons, where they're the unquestioned leaders, they're a year better, and whatever talent around them, because that's what you need to do. You need to build your talent around those two star players. And I think you feel pretty good going into next season, but there's so much that needs to happen between now and whenever this roster is constructed.
So they're both top 100 guys in terms of like the draft. Unfortunately for them, there's only 60 some odd guys that get drafted.
Right.
And they are not, I would be, I guess, surprised if either of them were to be at that. Will one more season do it for them? I don't know, because the older you get, the less the NBA wants you as well. But the thing about it is you can make more money staying in college now than you can going and being the 67, or, the 61st pick or whatever it would end up being. So I think it makes more sense. I know that, Nolan was saying, I don't want to talk about that because this is about this team and all that stuff. And so then it was, I think Michael McCleary followed up and was like, so you don't want to say that? And he goes, no, I want to be here. For sure, I want to be here. I want to be a Badger for 4 years. But like I said, we just had one of the hardest losses that a team can have in a season, losing your last game of the year. I'm not really concerned about what I'm going to do for future years. So he made it clear that he, that's the intention. But again, I am 2 years removed from a locker room where Chucky Hepburn was crying tears and saying, we'll be back here. We'll be back here. We'll be back here. Chucky did the right thing for him, and it proved to be a good choice. He had a great senior season at Louisville. But anything that's said in that locker room after a game, emotional like that, it's not worth a ton.
And I is going to do everything it can to keep those guys. If it doesn't work out, I don't believe it would be for a lack of effort, because they know how important those guys are. And to your point about, I understand the notion professionally that if you're a year older, people would like high upside younger guys. I also think to hell with that to a degree, because like John Tonje is an old guy, but got himself drafted by playing really well. And I know his position was a little bit different because he was coming off a year at Missouri where he was hurt and barely played. But if you're a fringe guy and you don't know if you're going to get drafted, I don't even think that's part of the conversation right now. I think to me, it's more about like, would they go to a different college? Because if you're not sure if you're going to get drafted, you're going to make seven figures by staying in college, and you're going to have an opportunity to get better as a player and put yourself in a position to be drafted. I think the only question is, do those guys believe that the best place for them will be Wisconsin?
And I think development wise, I don't know, at least in John's case, I think he's made strides every year.
He has. And so is Nolan.
And he would be, I would assume he would be the guy next year. John Blackwell.
You would think so. I would also
kind of thought he was going to be the guy this year.
Well, right. I would be curious about what they do with the transfer portal. And, I think we should acknowledge, like Nick and John, tremendous duo. They've, Nick said it again in the locker room, best backcourt duo in the country. And it's hard for me to argue with the numbers that both those guys put up. Again, even in a loss, they combined for 49 points. I don't think it was I don't know that anybody ever said or thought that it was easy, but Greg acknowledged after the game that especially early in the season, it was a challenge for those guys. And you can understand why it would be with the two guys that Greg said in the offseason were the alphas. Like, there's only one basketball and one guy's going to get the shot. And I know the staff has talked about early in the season, like, well, if one guy got a few shots, the other guy felt like he had to get his shots. And so I think they did a really good job. And that's a big part of the ascension, as Greg put it, because they played well together. But if Wisconsin can go and get a guy who can be ball dominant and get 22 points, then maybe John isn't the number one, but certainly you'd feel really good about having Blackwell with his talent and ability to score, that he's only going to be better in year 4.
Yep, I would agree. And again, you lose Boyd, you lose Rhodey, you lose Carrington, so you have to replace those three guys. Isaac Gard as well. So you lose those three, and then you don't know about Winter and Blackwell. Rapp, I believe, told Journal Sentinel after the game that he had every intention of being back here next year. So like not going somewhere else, not going pro, obviously, but not going somewhere else. And then it's, what do you think of some of your younger guys? Alexis Bieliauskas started a ton of games, made a bunch of strides. I think he's a future piece, certainly a future piece of this team. And then it's, Will Garlock got some time towards the end of the year. Hayden Jones got some time towards the end of the year. Both those guys had to step up with Nolan Winter went out. What do you think about them? And then it's, with Kinzinger, what is his role in Jack Janicki as well? They have guys, but they have starting spots open. I would say that for sure.
Yeah, well, definitely.
In the backcourt, obviously. Right. But like, if you think about in the front court, if Winter comes back, do they have spots open in the front court? I mean, like you're going to replace him. You're going to say somebody you're going to bring in instead of Rapp, instead of Bielauskas, you're going to bring in somebody else that's going to start over those two guys.
If you can bring yes. If you have the quality and the financial means.
Do you think that is something that is going to happen?
Oh, well, I guess there's a part of me that would want to know how many spots will they have available, because our guy's going to leave. I mean, everybody can talk about how much they enjoy being in the program, and ultimately you want to go somewhere where you can be an impact player and get paid and all of those types of things. But I think every staff owes it to the program to go try and find the best players, but there is a balance, and we've talked about this with football and not alienating certain guys. There's a lot to like about the potential of that young group. And I know, like, keeping guys like Kinziger and Garlock, and certainly Hayden Jones, like that's really important. And those in-state guys who can be the backbone, and for as much as the transfer portal's been important, Greg does go back to, you need certain guys who are kind of the backbone foundational pieces that can understand the culture, but then establish and set the culture for the future transfer portal players. So I don't know, the thought process behind all these guys. I think it's very rare and not believable to think everybody's just going to stick around. But look, they've hit home runs 3 straight years in the portal. They're going to need to do it a 4th straight year. That seems very clear, and try and retain these guys. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done to put Wisconsin in a position where it can get back to the NCAA tournament and try and figure out a way to win some of these games.
Agreed. Did you want to hit on a few listener questions here?
Why not? I mean, this is essentially like our de facto postmortem. So let's do it.
Season recap.
Look, if we do a show again, Zach, it's going to be in a couple months when the guys left and some guys joined the program, unless there's like a 11th hour bombshell, like somebody leaving that's a big time guy. I don't know.
All right, let's not talk any of that into existence yet. Let's get a bit of a break. Got some spring football to get back to. My understanding was it was apparently a very good practice for the offense this morning. So can't wait to get back to that. All right, Up North Badger says Gard is a great regular season coach. That has been proven, but has become a mental hurdle to make the right adjustments and implement effective strategies in March. The tournament becomes a different type of game he seems to struggle to adjust to. I don't know. I'll throw an overreaction or no to that question.
I think it's an overreaction. I mean, the struggle to adjust to. I guess what should they have done differently today? Let me ask you that. If you were a coach.
Don't do that to me. I'm not a basketball guy at all. You're the basketball guy. You tell me.
I'm just asking, like, effective strategies. I mean, they scored 82 points. They led for 34 minutes. Obviously, you'd like them to defend a little bit better. But I can't say, like, well, the strategy to put the ball in Nick Boyd's hands. John Blackwell had 20 points in the first half. Should they have figured out a way to get him involved more in the second half? But then you're taking away all the opportunity. Well, not all, but Nick Boyd. Like, I don't know if I agree with that, but it is hard to pinpoint what is it that he's doing or not doing that's preventing Wisconsin from doing stuff in the NCAA tournament that they do in the regular season against quality opponents. Because it's not like we're, of course they're going to lose in the NCAA tournament because they don't play or beat quality opponents when they're not in the NCAA. Like, they do that. And that's what makes this all the more maddening.
Absolutely. Connor says he thinks people are overreacting in general about the loss. It sucks, but that's sports. Sometimes you get beat. In general, Wisconsin's defense has been mediocre the last few years. What needs to change? I think we've already kind of hit on some of that. I
think I do fall in the camp, and I don't know what people will think of this. Like, it sucks, and that's sports. It sucks. I mean, it's unbelievable. But that's what happens sometimes. And you can say, well, you need a combination of talent and mental fortitude. Like, you can't get tight in these critical moments. But I felt like Wisconsin, for the most part, was able to kind of, in the moments where it felt like they would be getting tight, they got points and they scored. And I know that there was the four straight missed shots, but like, I don't know that that's what it was either. So yeah, it sucks.
Well, when High Point made their comeback and it was right there, they would make a bucket. And it was like, when it got tight again, they were going back and forth. It was insane.
Yep. Boyd went right down the hill and got to the cup.
Yeah, it was insane. Back and forth, back. It was like a tennis match. Like your head was just going back and forth. Like it was, there was like a 4 or 5 possession stretch there on each side where high level shot making, it was answer for answer. It was really, really, really good basketball. And, that happens, right? So Kelly says, this is an unfair NIL question. I don't think you're going to like this one. But is Wisconsin really getting its bang for their buck with John Blackwell? He's a good two-way player, but at times he disappears when the team can't afford it. Is it time to re-sign him or let him walk?
Oh, that doesn't make me uncomfortable at all, dude.
I didn't say uncomfortable. I disagree with.
Oh, disagree with. You keep that dude. I mean, are you kidding me? He averaged 19 plus points per game. I get that he's not perfect, and I get that there were moments where he wasn't the version of himself that we've seen at times. I don't want to pretend to know what was going on behind the scenes either. Like, that seemed to be pretty significant. If John is going to talk about that publicly, and granted, not divulge all the details, which he is free to do, but you get improvement out of that dude every single year. You've got a leader. You've got, he can score at all 3 levels very clearly. He makes the players around him better. And he was able to make this happen with Nick Boyd for a ball dominant guard. I guess the question I would ask is this: for the money that he's making, which let's assume is 7 figures, I feel like that's kind of reasonable for somebody who's a starting guard and that you're going to try and retain and that other schools are going to offer money to. Who would you go get that you feel like is going to make that kind of an impact right now? And you've got someone who's got 3 years invested in the program and has these relationships and is so important to the program. Like, I just think, I think that's kind of a foolish way to look at this, to be quite honest. It's a luxury isn't the right word, because you've got to pay the man, but to have the opportunity to have a player like that come back for a year 4, you take that all day, every day.
Yes. I mean, he has put a lot into Wisconsin. Wisconsin's put a lot into him. And I'm not just talking financially, development. They were a school that believed in him before anybody else did in high school, and gave him the scholarship. And that doesn't mean that Michigan, or maybe not Michigan State, but Michigan or some of these other big schools aren't going to come throw money at him. Wisconsin, if they let him walk, he's going to end up on a very good power conference team, and a team that is going to be in the top 25 and be in the tournament next year. It would make it. John Blackwell is absolutely, even above Nolan Winter, is the guy that, and I like Nolan, really, really good player. John Blackwell is the one you want back. He's at the top of the list. Nolan's like maybe like an inch below that. Maybe.
Yeah, man. And like, let's be real. There are going to be schools that inquire. I wrote about this in the summer.
Already.
Glenn Blackwell, his dad, talked about it, and he's been pretty open. Like, there were schools that were promising him, oh, you'll have this starting spot and whatever money is out there. And, at least Glenn's message publicly was, and I told John, you tell them that basically you didn't believe in me out of high school, so I'm not going to believe in you now. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But, and maybe it's not that simple, but absolutely there are going to be every school imaginable interested in a player of that caliber. So we'll see what Wisconsin is able to do and what John ultimately wants, because I think that's really more what it is about.
Absolutely. Travis says, hope springs eternal. What should Batter fans be most hopeful for? I know the answer to this one. Yeah, I know the answer to this one. AJ Storr, John Tonje, Nick Boyd. They have been fantastic in the portal at getting impact players, and they've gotten better each year. And you could, whatever flavor you prefer, John Tonje or Nick Boyd, they're both really, really good. But they certainly didn't get worse between John Tonje and Nick Boyd. They've gotten better every year. They have done this very, very well in adding impact players from the portal, that is what I'd be hopeful for. They've done a great job of it, and maybe you would hope this isn't the year that it doesn't happen. But the way that they played this year, it's in the guys that they potentially could get, when you look at them, they have to be enticed by what they saw this year. And they have to be enticed by AJ Storr, John Tonje, and Nick Boyd and what they were able to do. And Nick Boyd was asked about that. Like, what would you say to people that potentially could come in here as transfers? Because they're going to have to replace guys. And he just said, they let you be yourself. Mm-hmm. They let you be yourself. You commit to them, they commit to you. So that's where I would be. That would be where I would be hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, for as much as we bemoan what college athletics has become, and portal season is included in that, portal season is also pretty damn exciting when you think about who's visiting and who's coming in. And in basketball, it has as much impact as any sport because of how many minutes those guys are ultimately going to play and how much they can impact a team. So that is look, Wisconsin has to knock it out of the park, because what choice do you have?
Adam says, how's the O-line looking in spring practice? Thoughts on inside linebackers and who will emerge in Wisconsin's secondary? We'll get to that next week.
Crown them. Natty time.
Megan says, are people possibly too hard on Greg Gard and not hard enough on the assistants? He led the scouting reports for all of Bo Ryan's tournament success, which feels like a big factor when playing unknown teams. Is strong scouting the aspect that has been missing lately?
I don't believe that to be the case at all. And I'll tell you this, so the spot that I had for this game was right behind the team bench, and you can hear what these assistants are talking about and what they're doing and what they're calling out. They scouted the hell out of High Point on pretty limited notice, and they were calling out the actions that High Point was running. I have absolutely no questioning of the staff and how they're able to prepare the players. Ultimately, it comes down to the players and how they're able to execute, and also some of those shots too. I don't know what you do with that, but no, they do a hell of a job, I would say, as a staff. That's my personal opinion.
There was a game, I'm trying to remember what game it was. It might've been the Washington game out there, but you could hear Brad calling out the defenses, or the offensive sets. Is that what you just said?
Well, I didn't say Brad specifically, but that's exactly what was happening today.
Yeah.
Yes.
He knew everything that was coming. You could tell, and that doesn't surprise me at all. that guy knows what's happening and the amount of time spent watching it. They all do. So it's on each individual assistant. They take different teams, right? So they would have guys, if they had won that game, they would have had guys scouting Arkansas and Hawaii afterwards, right? And then they would have also, leading into this, had guys looking at Hawaii and Arkansas tape before it. There's probably somebody else that had the High Point tape. Sounds like may have been Brad. But I don't think that they were surprised by a lot of the stuff I don't think they're surprised by the stuff they see. It's the ability to cover it. And I thought for the most part, until late, I'm talking about the outside shooting, the dribble penetration continued, was a problem. It improved a little bit with Andrew Rohde guarding
Anderson?
What's his name? No. Martin. Yeah. It improved. He had 23 points, but when it was against Nick Boyd, it was one way, and against Andrew Rohde, it was a little bit different. I thought Rohde did a better job on him than Nick Boyd did. That to me, yes. And yeah, if he was a few inches taller, he's listed at 5'10". I don't know that he's 5'10", but if he was a few inches taller, he would be playing in a power conference for sure. He's an impressive player. He's a really good player. But yeah, I don't know that they were unprepared for what they saw.
No.
The execution defensively hasn't been there most of the year. So, and again, we have to give credit where credit is due with some of the shots that Johnston hit. Hitting one leg 3-pointers, and then also going out and hitting from the logo. He is who we thought he was, right?
Yes. Just this reminds me. I want to say one quote that Greg Gard said specifically about defensively, because he was talking about he knew they needed to get better all year. And he said the individual parts of this group I think are more built for offense. At the end, he said defensively, I was never satisfied with where we were all year, but it was the makeup of this team, and we had to live in the world we lived in from an offensive standpoint. So, it's like you don't have the perfect blend, and you probably never will. And you've got to figure out what's going to work best for the group and try to cover up some of those deficiencies, but they could just never get to a point where you knew you could rely defensively in some of these big time matchups.
I think we'll probably get taken to task because we haven't been hard enough on Greg Gard, which is fine. But I'll ask this question. Matthew says, does this heat up his seat at all? He's done a great job in the regular season and with the portal, but his resume in March is atrocious.
I really don't think so. I don't know. I guess if he had made one Sweet 16 in the last 9 years, would that be enough for this to not be the conversation piece? Like if he had won one round of 32 game and they got to the Sweet 16 and they lost, would that change how we view all of this? I'm not dismissing the importance. I'm not dismissing the importance of getting to a Sweet 16, but like, I don't think the heating up of a seat is a conversation point unless you've got somebody who isn't moving a program forward. Like they're not good enough to get to the tournament, or they're on the bubble, and it's a big deal if they can make it one time in 5 years. And again, I mean, maybe this makes me or us an apologist for Gard, but again, they went 24-11 this year, 14-6 in the Big Ten. They've had a lot of 20+ win seasons, and so it's unfortunate, and it sucks for him and for this program and for everyone involved that Wisconsin has not been able to get over that hump of late. But I think that there's a clear distinction to me between that and that we got an issue with the head coach, so to the point that the program has to move on.
I don't know what I like. You're not going to confuse me with the success hasn't been there in March. I don't think you're gonna. I'm not going to carry water for Greg Gard. He hasn't been good enough in March. I think no. You don't disagree with that.
No,
I just don't know. I just don't know what you expect. Do you just say screw it and bring somebody else in? Like Wisconsin, people are not going to want to hear this. Wisconsin's not Kentucky. Wisconsin is not Indiana. Do you think Indiana would take Wisconsin's success right now? And what they've done over the last 10 years?
I do.
They're on coach number 6 or 7 since Bobby Knight. Maybe more, probably more than that, actually. Like, be careful what you wish for. And you don't have to look too far to be careful about what you wish for. We are going to go on Saturday, assuming I get home. We're going to go on Saturday and see a program where you wanted something different. You wanted something better. You thought the success that was happening, and I'm on board with this. I was on board with it as well. I thought it was time. You thought the success, it wasn't good enough. You need something better. You need something more. And what's happened? Blown up in your face. Blown up in, again, I'll put myself there as well. Blown up in my face. Thought it was a home run. It's not. Cutting bait and running because you don't have success, the ultimate success is, I think, it can be foolish. And so acting out of anger, acting out of impulse can be fraught with peril, I think is fair to say.
Well put.
So I am not satisfied with what Greg Gard has done in March. There's no one that could be satisfied what he's done in March. I just don't know what you do about it. You're not going to, if you're Chris McIntosh, it's not going to happen. So instead of saying fire him, actually, you know what? Keep saying it. I don't care. You guys do what you want. I'm not going to tell you how to fan. It's not realistic at this point. Now, if he misses the tournament next year, then the following year, yes, kind of like you did a couple years ago, right? Like when you missed it after 20, Johnny Davis leaves, you missed the tournament the following year. If they had missed it the next year, he was absolutely on the hot seat, and obviously brought it back with all the changes that were made. And we've seen that, and I'm sure he'll make some adjustments this offseason, and we'll see exactly what it looks like in March. The unfortunate part is there's November, December, January, and February to get through to March, and they're a much better team in March up until today, and even today, than they were in November and December. I think that's on Greg Gard, and that's on the coaching staff and the players.
Yes, so, I do think that the mark of a good coach is consistent improvement over time during the course of a season, and being as competitive as this program has been. Those are good things. Those are things that Greg Gard has helped to build here and continue since Bo Ryan left. But, and there is going to be this but until something different happens in the tournament, the lack of success there also defines him as a coach to this stage. But we'll see what he can do this offseason, him and his staff, to rebuild and evaluate the deficiencies from this year and try and address them moving forward, because that is what they were able to do. You know, they had this watershed moment, if you will, 3 years ago when they couldn't hit the broadside of the barn and they couldn't score, and they knew what their deficiency was and they went out and addressed it. And so they've got to do something to figure it out this time around, and starts with the roster they're able to build here in the next couple months.
Again, not going to pretend that Greg Gard is going to be remembered for anything other than what he does in March. And whether you think that's fair or not, it is what it is. At this point in time in college basketball, so much focus is put on the tournament, and that's what he is going to be remembered for. And right now it's not good enough. But it doesn't mean you cut bait and run. Anything you'd like to add at all, Jesse?
I think we pretty well covered it.
All right. There were more questions. I mean, there were a ton of questions, a lot of them very angry questions, which I completely understand and totally get from that perspective. And we appreciate all the intensity and passion that you have for Wisconsin basketball. And hopefully we'll do episodes. We'll do some episodes. There's going to be a lot to talk about with the portal and everything like that. So we'll have more episodes, but certainly do appreciate everybody following along with basketball all year. This was the first podcast we started. I believe it was Brad Davison's freshman year. Is the year,
I think.
Yeah, 2017-18, that season where they missed the tournament. That was the first year. And so we're coming up on a decade of doing this, close to a decade of doing this.
Maybe it's us, Zach. Did you ever think about that? Maybe it's us.
We just stopped doing the swing.
Like the Carolina Panthers podcast.
Yes. The Carolina. Yes, I
remember that. Natty.
Meow, was it Meow something? I don't know.
Meow Mix or
Meow Mix, yeah, something like that. Oh, what a ridiculous name for a podcast. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we should rename the podcast because they no longer run the swing. They haven't run it in a long time. Might as well.
I don't know. It's catchy though.
What is the ball continuity offense?
Ball screen continuity offense. The ball screen continuity doesn't really hit the same.
BSCO. I don't think it hits. Yeah. We'll have to figure something else out. But
we got a whole off season to work on it. But yeah, as Zach said, thanks to all of you for listening and watching, and we really enjoy doing these shows and look forward to doing many more.
We will. Before that, though, or until then, I guess, a lot of football to talk about. Check out the camp. Plenty to get into with Badgers as spring practice has begun, and looking forward to that. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from Badger Connect. You've been listening to The Swing.